Om. 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 Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Dhyanamoolam Guru Murti, Pujamulam Guru Padam, Mantramulam Guru Bhaktam, Mokshamulam Guru Kripa. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejasve. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhyatmastuma Vidvishadahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. To begin with my first experiences or the great blessing of seeing my Guru for the first time, I will explain that before I had a family, I had many interests, but on beginning to start a family, I felt that I wanted to devote all my life and all my time and energy to bringing them up. But when the last one was 5 months old, it was 11 years had passed, and I felt the need to do something else, something other than looking after the family, which of course I enjoyed very much. And somebody told me about Prunella Stack's League for Health and Beauty. I contemplated that, but then I met a friend up the road whose children I used to look after during the day, because many of the mothers of children in our streets worked. They all came to my place and they had a wonderful time, including myself. And so I got to know some of them. And when I mentioned to her, on my 37th birthday, my husband had a party and everybody was drinking and smoking in a high behavior party. I really wasn't interested because for a long time I felt the need for something else. And I found myself talking to one other person who happened to be a pilot and the husband of a friend of mine up the road, whose children I had every day. And she said, "Why don't you take up yoga?" So I said, "What's that?" And she gave me a book by Indra Devi, which of course I read, fell in love with it, and then decided that I would like to take up yoga. My same friend said that at the medical center where she worked as a secretary, somebody was knocking on everybody's doors and asking if they want to take up yoga. This happened to be Joan van Alphen. So, having heard that, I decided that I would have a go at that. And I gathered a couple of friends from the street, and together we went to Jay's class in Kenilworth. At that time, she just had a home, and we did yoga asanas in the lounge. I loved it. I really loved it. And so did the others. And we took turns, as I say, driving. It was sort of the highlight of my week for me that day with Jane JF. Her name was Joan that Swamiji preferred the name Jaya, which means victory over negativity, as you probably know. And it suited Jaya very much. She was an amazing personality. And when she had some appointment, because I loved the posture so much, probably I picked it up quite quickly, having been a dancer in my earlier life. She used to ask me to conduct the class for her, which I was delighted to do. By that, we'd all become very great friends too, the people in the class and myself. So I did that. I did not know at the time that on some of those occasions, she had been invited to go out with Swami Venkatesananda, with Hindu friends on outings and so on. So anyway, I only learned that afterwards. So at the same time, one day, Jaya said, "There's a Swami talking at the Mitchell Hall in Melbourne. I don't know why everybody doesn't go there." So the three of us walked from Rosebank to Melbourne, which wasn't far, quite safe in those days to walk at night. And we walked into the Mitchell Hall, and there was this amazing feeling. I felt so uplifted by the talk, by what he said, and the way he said it, and his tremendous magnetism, that I walked home with them on air. I can tell you, I felt as if I was walking on air. And that was the beginning of my many meetings with Swami Venkatesananda. That was the first time. One of our friends also used to teach at the Mitchell Hall, which belonged to our Hindu friends, who had a shop in Mowbray, and they used to give her the keys, and she used to take a class on Sunday morning. She was an Afrikaans girl. She was a radiographer, very bright, and she sang the Sanskrit introduction, the introductory slokas, so beautifully. I know Swamiji was very proud of her. And when I took the class there, although I was not a bit nervous to take Jaya's class, because I know that this wonderful woman who was called Ananda later by Swamiji, although her name was Frida Kamage before, I knew that she was so highly thought of that I felt I wouldn't be good enough for it. And then when I was doing the spinal twist, there was a large picture of Gurudev behind me. And I swear to you that Gurudev smiled. After that, I was well away, and I loved it. So I did used to occasionally take classes at the Mitchell Hall, as well as for Jaya. One day, Jaya said that she was going to invite the Swami for tea and let him see how she was teaching us. She wanted, I think, his approval. And we waited and we waited and we waited, and Swamiji didn't come. Laurel Zahn was painting a portrait of him, and she lived in House Bay, and it took longer, of course, than was expected. So he didn't make it that day. Jaya took it very well, but she arranged another time. And it was then that I sort of saw Swamiji at close quarters when we demonstrated the Surya Namaskar and a few other things. When Jaya had a few more students and the room was getting a bit small, she needed a larger place. So she hired a little hall, a scout hall, not far away. And it was there that we used to go and have classes there when the classes got big. Swamiji Jaya invited Swamiji to come there one day, and he spoke and spoke to us as he saw what we were doing. Later on, of course, Jaya had a yoga room built, but we used the Mitchell Hall before that. So, and of course the Scout Hall. So 2 halls were hired. Not many people knew about yoga in those days. Now everybody does it. So we used to go around giving the demonstrations all over the place to introduce yoga to people. Hatha yoga, of course, but it's a good start. And in so doing, of course, we met many more people, and many people heard about Swami Venkatesananda. One day, I had a friend who suggested that, oh yes, well, I'm sorry, I'm going a bit too fast. Because I used to teach Hatha yoga after a while in a little scout hall, I just thought it would be really nice if we had a yoga hall ourselves. And my husband was very good at that. He really did do a good job. He built a yoga room with a change room and a little shower as well. He was a very good builder, that was his line. And so I used to teach yoga there. And one day a friend of mine said, why don't you invite Swamiji to stay with you? So I took my courage and asked Swamiji. You know how Swamiji looks sometimes? He sort of narrowed his eyes as if he was weighing you up. And then he said, all right. And then that is when Swamiji used to stay, when he came to Cape Town. Of course, he shared himself out with everybody in South Africa, all the main cities in South Africa. And so we would have Swamiji for 3 weeks, 3 glorious weeks, where he would lecture and then, of course, greet everybody. And at the same time, when he was staying there, they used to come and have his darshan. He used to type in those days. He was busy typing books. He did a tremendous amount, you know, in a day. And he kind of measured his time out. First, there was a Suprabhatam, wonderful Suprabhatam, the prayers to the Lord Venkatesha. Swamiji was always very close to the Lord Venkatesha, very drawn to him, which of course is why Gurudev made him Venkatesananda, Swami Venkatesananda, without using. And so we taught there, and Swamiji used to lecture there, and then afterwards he was able to sort of slip out nicely into his room for that rest of the night. And in the morning, I had the privilege of sitting with him in the meditation room, first with the Suprabhatam, and then just sitting quietly and meditating. One day, there was a lady who was a very good person, but excitable, and she had come to see Swamiji, and Swamiji had sent her into the meditation room. When I went, he just told me to just go into the meditation room for a while, and I thought, well, that's funny, you know, but perhaps he's busy. So I went and sat there, and I saw this person next to me, and I thought, oh no, how am I going to meditate with this very excitable lady? And you know what happened? After a while, I felt this beautiful, beautiful bliss sort of flowing over me. It could only have been Swamiji, you know. The Swamiji even sent a thought to you. You picked it up, you couldn't but receive it. So we realized that. After a while, I met somebody who also used to come to the Mitchell Hall for the lectures. And she used to have Laya yoga classes in her room, in her house. And she invited me to go and join. So that was, I think it was on a Friday evening. I used to love those Laya yoga evenings. They were really beautiful, beautiful, sort of wonderful energy. And there was Swamiji's picture there. So I did that as well. Unfortunately, I didn't know that this lady and Jaya were not so on good terms. So I didn't know that it was not perhaps the right thing to do, you know. which I suppose everything has a reason. And so I did do that. And then I began teaching in the yoga room, which my husband built for me. First of all, of course, I used to use the Brownie Hall, as I was also a brown owl, took over from somebody who left. You know how that happens. And so they allowed me to use that hall. And then my husband built this beautiful, beautiful yoga room. So I was able to teach there. Swamiji, when he came, he used to also make recordings there. We're making CD tapes. That's where he did one of the Laya yoga tapes, and also one of the posture tapes he did there. And when I said to him afterwards, "Oh, you didn't do the relaxation," he said, "I'm quite relaxed," shaking himself. So and later, of course, the tapes became CDs, didn't they? So much happened in this place, and I did try my very best to do the ironing and the washing and everything for my family, and see what they needed, take them out on Sundays and so on, and not neglect my family. And yet at the same time, the classes built up. So I was having about 13 classes a week. So of course, some of the people who've been coming to me, one was a wonderful Islamic man called Ivan, or Isaac as his real name was. He used to teach the class on Sunday morning. And Swamiji met him, and as he was Islamic, Swamiji gave him a little prayer mat. He was always so thoughtful in things like that. Eventually, I had quite a few teachers teaching for me as well when the classes took too much of my time. And I did want to do everything, do my duties as a mother and wife, and at the same time, I was getting more and more involved in yoga and longing to lead a spiritual life. I know you can lead a spiritual life in a household, but that's only if everyone in the household feels like you do, and that wasn't the case. And so eventually, by that time, Swami Venkatesananda, who was in Irene Coastal, she had come with Swamiji from Australia, and she went with Swamiji to India in 1978, and he sent her down to Madras to learn with Jessica Shah. So it was rather wonderful when people came to me and they needed extra help or extra lessons, which I didn't certainly have time for. Being an ex-nurse as well, she came and she took private lessons for me. Some of you will remember her very well, and she's here right now. So it worked out very well. But then it became more and more difficult to continue there because there was getting a little bit of friction. And then we decided that we should actually have a place which was for everybody, which belonged to everybody, and which would bring peace to whoever came to it. That was our feeling. Swamiji had called the old yoga room Ananda Kucher, and we called this one the same. We carried on with the same name. So it was quite amazing because not having any money, we had to get a sort of a trust and collect some money. I had one person who was an architect, one person who was a lawyer. Everybody was there that we needed, all our students, and they all offered to help. So with the help of these marvelous students, this yoga center in Ranwash East was built. Although when we talked about it at first, Swamiji said, when I told him about it, don't do anything just to please me or any other. So all the same, I carried on, and I know that he was pleased that we did so, irrespective of whether Swamiji came or not. We felt that this is what we wanted to do as a kind of a monument for Swamiji. So it has been enlarged, stretched even further since then. But this is where we started, and this is where Swamiji was going to come and open the center. Even the Islamic builder who built this for us was really looking forward to meeting this Swamiji that he's heard so much about. We were due to open the center on the 4th of December. But Swamiji passed away, unfortunately, on the 2nd. And just before that, he actually said, "Get me a wheelchair," because he was not well. "Get me a wheelchair to get to the airport." While we were putting up the curtains, Swami Prabhupada and myself, somebody came in and told us. Our friend, by the way, had moved into a house in the same street. I actually didn't even know at the time that they lived there when we chose to build in this corner. I didn't know that they had their place there. And then Swamiji said, "Oh, that was divine will that you happen to be in the same street." However, the 4th came, and some of them went up to see Swamiji, to at least for the memorial service. And I was offered a ticket by them, but you know, I felt that it was more important that we carry on with this center dedicated to Swamiji, rather than go up just for the funeral service. So we opened it on the 4th as planned. We had a special time sitting at the same time as they were having the service up there that we sat too. And you know, we really felt that Swamiji was with us. We really felt that Swamiji was there. What's rather beautiful is that many people all over the world had the same feeling. It seems that Swamiji could project himself anywhere, even after, of course, leaving the body. At one stage, which I haven't mentioned yet, I think, when one of the devotees dropped out, who used to do a lot of work with Swamiji and keep in touch, what happened was that Swamiji had so many devotees that he would send a packet, a little envelope, to each country with slips of paper or sheets that you had to cut names and addresses out and send it to each individual, which could hardly send hundreds of letters to every country. So I was given that job to do. One of my friends helped, and because we felt it was not good to read other people's letters, we did not. We just put them in the envelope and sent them. Then Swamiji said, he often used to give me instructions as to what to do. Sending letters all over the place. And he said to me, "Read them." So he must have known that I was not reading the letters. And apparently I was supposed to do that to save him telling me all the news and everything that he was giving there. After that, of course, I did as he told me and read the letters. All these letters, they may have been perhaps only 2 lines, but it meant so much to the person who received it. His letters were very powerful. And because Swamiji only came to us 3 weeks a year, my connection was often through letter writing. He wrote quite often also. Of course, in those days, it would take sometimes 3 weeks for a letter to arrive. We used to have yoga camps too, and my younger children used to come to attend these meetings. I had a wonderful mother who lived quite close by, and she was always looking after the house, babysitting when I was not there. And of course, I did not want to impose upon her, so I could never be away for long. As a rule, when a yoga camp was running, I would just spend the day there, a wonderful day. What I noticed too was, when we all think, when Swamiji showered love upon us, we all got the impression that we were special. That was terrible, wasn't it? But we all felt that we were special. But then you went to somebody else's place, you realized you were not special at all. I mean, on one of the yoga camps, I remember, I Swamiji, I couldn't even find him, and nobody told me where he was either. And these are the people who used to sit, and I used to be cooking while they were with Swamiji all day. So I was kind of a bit hurt about that. And then eventually I heard that he was giving a talk, and I sat there. For some reason or another, I got a little bit emotional and went outside, crying my eyes out. Swamiji rushed out and gave me a hug. But going back in the car, he said, "You're stupid." I felt my jaw hardened. You see, this is how he taught us. What he was doing all the time was actually cutting our egos. Some people would see them coming to have an interview with Swamiji, and he would pour this love and affection onto them, and they would change beings. But then, of course, the ego wasn't gone. The ego had to go. And so we all had to accept the fact that none of us were more important than anybody else. We were all, as it were, in the same boat. What Swamiji was very fond of as well was interfaith meetings, where we read from each scripture. In the beginning, I looked in on one of these, and I thought it looked very dull because everyone looked so serious, you see, and I'm a very serious person. But then I realized how important it was afterwards. The Swami used to hold the meetings at the little hall. One day I decided, more because I wanted to see Swamiji than anything else, that I would join this satsang. The Swamiji looked at me and said, "Ha!" as much as to say, "Got you," Eventually I realized the importance of satsang, and not just hatha yoga. So we held at our Rondebosch East Center, we used to have weekly satsangs, reading from scriptures and chanting. And we all enjoyed that very much. And it's very difficult now with lockdown. We're doing the best we can. And we hope one day that we shall be able to continue as we did before. So Swamiji was in, I think it was in America one day, that he wrote to me and said, "Oh, I didn't know that I'd had a heart." I didn't think anything of it, but apparently he had something wrong with his heart when he was perhaps walking up a hill or something. But he closed it in such a way that I didn't realize the importance of that. And then after that, it probably gradually got worse. He had a bad attack in India, but still traveled all the way down to Tirupati to see the Lord Venkatesananda there. Swami Parvati was with him at the time and felt this tremendous energy all the time that he seemed to emanate, even though he had this heart attack. Unfortunately, after this happening, because he wasn't seen to straight away, he found it difficult to breathe. And when he gave talks in Australia and elsewhere, he had to have a fan going. So you had the noise of the fan going so that he could breathe. How he gave himself up, how he sacrificed himself for us. He sat at the feet of Gurudev. He would probably have wanted to sit there forever and imbibe to the energy of Gurudev. But Gurudev did ask him to come out, and he was his mouthpiece, because Gurudev never left India. So I just saw this at one stage, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but when Swamiji was giving one of his last talks at the Mitchell Hall, he sort of paused for a while and then remembered or came up with the word that he wanted to use. He very seldom did this actually. He was very, very flowing in his talks. But in that moment, I suddenly saw Gurudev, whom I've never seen except pictures of, completely overlapping him, as it were. It was only for a couple of seconds, and then it was gone. In the car going back home, I said to Swamiji, "You don't really encourage visions and things like that, do you?" No, he said. But Swamiji, I said, today I saw Gurudev sort of overlapping you, as it were. And he said, "Did you hear that, Sushila?" Because she was in the car with us. "Put it in the newsletter." I think he'd said too that other people had experienced this as well. If it had just been myself who'd said that, but it could have been imagination or anything like that, but it was very, very, very clear. On another occasion, I had a dream, and I dreamt that I was in Swami Shivananda's presence, and probably because his presence was so great, I was only allowed to see a corner of his dhoti. But he asked me apparently to make a cup of tea. This is in my dream, right? Very vivid one. When I told Swamiji that, he said, "That's because he approves of you." He didn't poo-poo it. There were so many things that we learned from just being with Swamiji, just being the way, just absorbing his energy and learning from our own mistakes that we made, because we did, of course, many mistakes. But he was so, if you were down and out and miserable, he could boost you up no end. But if you got a bit big for your boot, oh boy, you were chopped down. That's what it was all about. Just building up the purity in us and taking out the bad. We all have our faults. We all have egos. And those egos have to be dropped in order for us to grow spiritually. And Swamiji was past master at doing this. If he was too harsh, people might have run away. But he knew just how to give so much and then soften the situation, so that you weren't too hurt. At one stage, on his 60th birthday, I think Swami Sushila arranged to have a birthday book, and we all wrote in it. Everybody from all over the world wrote in this book, which we presented to Swamiji. At one stage, for some reason, I think, I was upset with Swamiji. Obviously, I was having one of those sort of lessons, you know. And in the audience after that, he was talking, and he looked at me and shook his head as much as to say, "Don't be like that." What could I do? What could I do? My mother also used to come to one or two of the classes, but she preferred working. When she was relaxing, or the class was relaxing, she'd say, "I used to think it was a waste of time, but I get used to it," she said. That's what she said. When my father, well, first of all, of course, my mother eventually passed away, and Swamiji used to write beautiful letters, and just to keep me put it from going down too far. And after my mother passed away, he said some beautiful things about her. Before that, he actually said once, you've got a long way to go before your life as versus your mother. I was so pleased to hear that, because to many people, she was just one who did the help with the washing and the ironing and looking after the kids. But he recognized that she was much, much more than that. So when she was crossing out of her body, Swami Venkatesananda came as well that morning. Incidentally, while she was ill, I wanted to give up our classes and look after her. But Swamiji, my mother said, no, don't do that. She didn't want me to give up my classes. So during the day, when I was teaching in the classes, Swami Parvati would sit with my mother, and at night, in the evening, I would go there and stay all night. When she eventually passed away, just to bring my mother in a little bit and to explain how she was, I said to her when her breathing was getting very bad, and I knew she was on her way out, I said, take your energy to the top of the head. And she nodded. And I actually saw her blue eyes, the light go off out of them. And the funny thing is that I felt relieved that she was not suffering anymore. And I actually felt my mother's elation at being free from the body. It was a beautiful experience. So when I went home and people wanted to commiserate with it, I said, please don't. It was so beautiful. And then before that, I had mentioned that my mum used to come down often, but my father, of course, was not interested. But he was a really good man and always supportive. One day, Swamiji said to me, I want to see your father. That was strange, because why does he want to see my father? Anyway, I took him to the little cottage, and he went down, saw my father, and gave him a hug. My father was an ex-army man, and not used to hugging, We didn't do that sort of thing in our house. We were awfully conservative and quite fully British, But my dad hugged him back. Soon after that, my father passed away. So Swamiji must have known it, giving him this just extra blessing. So many things that Swamiji did that we would never be able to thank him and to make up and to pay for all the blessings that we received from Swamiji, and how he sacrificed himself for all of us. So I think there's not much more I can say, except a few things that will come up. That when we first went to the Mitra Hall, we met many of our Indian friends and Hindu friends, because normally we would not see them. We were all kind of separated in those days. And what Swamiji used to do, he lived in a tiny place called in Salt River, which was a small place, which belonged to Mr. Mansuk, who is known as Gopi Mansuk. And he had a little place outside. He used to hold functions there for Swamiji, even the Durga Saptashati, things like that. And they used to invite us, and we used to go there, and always very hospitably welcomed there too. And later, due to Swamiji's grace, they moved to Rylands and built very large houses there. Mr. Mansuk, or Gopi Mansuk, used to have meetings in his garage, his large garage, with a shrine, and even the Durga Saptashati there too, and all that. And we used to go there as well and sit with them all. We became very close to all Hindu friends, and they used to invite us sometimes to have meals with them, with Swamiji. I can't tell you what was a great privilege it was to be able to be welcomed by our friends there. There was one lady who was so fond of them all that she went to live with them. Her name was Wojinski, I think it was, and she was given the name Gita by Swamiji. The family were so fond of Gita that after she passed away, the Reddy family who lived with them and very close friends, they called their daughter Gita as well. All this we saw, so all the apartheid era and all that sort of thing was kind of completely overlooked by Swamiji's grace. He even always managed to get a visa. Mr. Mansuk, you know, and Uncle Gang as we called him, they used to have to work as waiters during the apartheid era. And Mr. Mansuk eventually became an MP. Another man, Bikku Castle, was most devoted to Swamiji. He was not educated at all, but he had a heart of gold and great devotion. And when people came from Mauritius, for example, to go to university, study here, he used to meet them and put them up in his place until they found a place to stay. And there were so many people like that that we met through Swamiji. And I think that was wonderful that you expanded, you felt that you were expanding yourself somehow more than you ever could before. Of course, each one of us have a lot to learn. Mostly we have a lot to learn about ourselves. And that's the most difficult part. So easy to look at somebody else and see where they go wrong. It's not so easy to look at yourself. He managed to get us to do this in such a gentle way. Somehow, it's such an art. And it is with great pleasure now that I talk of some of these incidents and some of these people who we met through Swamiji. How all sorts of difficulties were overcome. All sorts of challenges went as well. People from all different walks of life came together in order to be with Swamiji. I always feel too that whoever is close to Swamiji, whoever they may be, I always feel a strong bond with all of them because that we all have in common, our love for Swamiji. I don't know whether I have more. I could perhaps ask if you want any questions, if there are any questions, which I may or may not be able to answer.
Yes, so we can open up for questions, or even since there's so many disciples of Swami Venkatesananda, even if they want to share something or greet Mother Yogeshwari or each other, that would also be
very nice.
But I would like for Vani just to be there with you, please, Vani Mataji, if you don't mind, just to be there with Mother Yogeshwari to help her. And also maybe just to make it easy, because there's quite a few of us, maybe if you want to say something or ask, just, you know, there's the raise hand function. And then you can press that, then we know who to call upon to ask. And then also, if you don't have your camera on, if you are asking something or speaking to Mother Yogeshwari, we would request you to please put the camera on so that we can see you. So yes, it's open for everyone, for anyone. Sushila Mataji, please, yes.
Oh, where's Sushila?
I'm unmuted. I just wanted to say how wonderful, wonderful it is to see you, Yogeshwari. And I was counting, and it was 51 years since we met. And I'm absolutely thrilled to see you. This is wonderful that we have Zoom. The pandemic has given us some gifts, and one of them is Zoom communications. So hugs and kisses.
Thank you so much, Sushila. It's absolutely marvelous to be in touch with you again. God
It
bless you
is.
so much.
It is.
You look so young.
Yeah. So young.
Thank you very much.
And likewise, looking at the screen, there's so many of us who have been together for decades. And that is one of the graces of knowing Swamiji. It brought us together, it keeps us together, and nothing will ever separate us.
I feel that too. I feel that very much. Thank you so much. I often find when we ask this sort of question, and there's sort of silence. There's some experience that you have to share. Maybe you're too young, I think. I must say that when I went to India, I was going to go with Swamiji once, and he said, you know, you're starting up this new place. It will fall apart if you go. So I said, sure. So I didn't. But when I did eventually go in 1988, truly it was always the Swamiji was there. Everything seemed to fall into place. We even met somebody who guided us all the way from South India up to Rishikesh. And the most amazing things happened. Everything seemed to glide along. So just as much as when Swamiji was alive and we sent a letter which took about 3 weeks and we asked a question. The question used to come back long before the letter came back. So just as much then as Swamiji connected with us from overseas, not necessarily, oh, I remember one thing, Sushila, remember, it was his birthday, and I invited all of us who were here to wish him on the telephone. We had no cell phones then, of course, and so we all stood round and everybody wished him. And then when I picked up the phone, he said, oh, it looked so beautiful.
Mm.
So it means that we weren't beautiful, but the fact that the love was there, all the love was there for each other and for Swamiji, that's what I think he was referring to. These things just come up occasionally in the mind, and anything like that also comes up. So please share it. It's always uplifting. I'm also amazed that Swami Venkatesananda is so dedicated to Swami Venkatesananda, but I've never met him. But I think he is absolutely dedicated to Swami and his teaching, and he's been a godsend to us. I'm so glad that we began to pass this ashram over to young people, because often people like to hang on to things when they're old, don't they? I didn't want to be one of those. And he's done such a good job with Swamiji here, right hand, and Priya, and all the others. I mean, it's been so wonderful that Swamiji's name, Swamiji's work is going to go on from the young people who've never met him, and yet are absolutely dedicated to him as his teaching. Thank you so much for letting me share my part, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of you in the following months if I'm still alive. I am on standby actually, so that's why I thought I'd better be the first one to talk, because I might have to say goodbye earlier. Funny how we're all living so old these days. Lots of people are living old. Pills. Oh, pills. No, I don't take pills. Supplements, maybe. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.